We witness the human cost of Israel's assault, which could see this country transformed into another Gaza. More than 100,000 people cross another border into Syria, choosing to trade one war for another.
They think Syria is a better bet. They think it's a safer place to be than Lebanon. And you can see and you can feel the urgency. Nobody's hanging around.
So, is this the escalation that everyone feared? I'll be bringing you all the developments live from Lebanon. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening and welcome to Beirut and our live and continuous coverage of the developing situation here in Lebanon. And every evening I've been here, standing here with you, asking you what could possibly happen next. And as I speak, what's being described as a limited ground invasion could already be underway. We believe small raids are already being carried out inside this country by Israeli special forces. Well, let me just show you these images that came in from our cameras just a short while ago. You're looking at heavy artillery fire in border towns. Local media here are already reporting that they can see tanks in a town called Ramish in southern Lebanon, although we haven't been able to verify or confirm that ourselves. But what is clear this evening is that a ground incursion is either limited or imminent, or it has already started. And the word limited continues to be used. Israel informed their counterparts in the United States and told them that they were going to do this. And of course, the United States has counseled Israel and told them to keep it limited in both scope and geography, because they're concerned that this could escalate into a much bigger war. Well, let's speak now to my colleague, John Sparks, who's here with me now. And John, for the entire week that we've been here, and we've seen all of these developments, from the pagers exploding, the walkie-talkies exploding, the targeted strikes on top Hezbollah commanders, and then the dramatic events of the weekend where Hassan Nasrallah was killed. The idea of a ground offensive has almost haunted this country for about a week and a half.
It's true, and we've got to this position very quickly, haven't we? The acceleration, the intensification has taken place, over 8 or 9 days. That is extraordinary. I'll go over some of the latest Lebanese media reporting tonight that they are hearing heavy artillery fire and tank fire in southern Lebanon. That sounds and feels like the ground is being softened up. This after a massive aerial bombardment by the Israelis. Sky News has confirmed from the Lebanese military, from the Lebanese army, that they are repositioning away from the Lebanese frontier. They are moving back. We don't know how far, but they are on the move. We also understand from UNIFIL, the UN has a force, a peacekeeping force on the border. UNIFIL have told us that they have gone back to their bases. They are not patrolling. They are not going out of their bases. They're not going anywhere, basically. And I think that gives you a very indication of what's going on. 3 Israeli towns in northern Israel, they have been declared closed military zones by the IDF, by the Israel Defense Forces. All the indications are there, all the signs that a ground operation, an incursion, is either just about to start or is already underway.
And while Hezbollah as an organization feels like it has been decapitated and their weapons, their artillery has been smashed and destroyed by the Israelis in the course of the last week, their top commander's gone, their special forces, the head of their special forces unit assassinated and killed, Hassan Nasrallah dead, one would think, okay, they're leaderless and there's tens of thousands of men heavily armed. However, many of them are battle-hardened from the war in Syria, for example. They have asked Israel to come in. We heard that from the Deputy Secretary General of Hezbollah today, saying, we are ready for you when you come.
This operation is fraught with risk for the Israelis. I think it was interesting that after the pager, the walkie-talkie explosions, Hassan Nasrallah, he held a speech a much anticipated speech. And in that speech, he said, I welcome Israelis to come into southern Lebanon. He said that it will be an opportunity for us, a terrible trap for you. He welcomed it. I think he was playing with words. I don't believe for a minute that he actually wanted an Israeli invasion of southern Lebanon, but that's what he said, and he said it for a good reason, which is that they believe, Hezbollah believes, that they are on a better military footing when the Israelis are on the southern Lebanese side. They know the territory, they're dug in, they have battle-hardened fighters, tens of thousands of them. One thing Nasrallah did was he sent Hezbollah fighters to Syria to fight on the side of Bashar al-Assad, and ultimately probably kept him in power. That's the reason he's probably still there, after the civil war. They have come back. There are people that Hezbollah have who know how to fight. They also have tens of thousands of weapons. Many of those will have been destroyed over the past 8 days. Some won't. They may be repositioning them. Again, this is fraught with risk for the Israelis.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is clear. There is not much they can do about the aerial bombardment, but a ground incursion and fighting that kind of traditional warfare is a different ballgame.
That's right. Nasrallah said in his speeches, you've got the technology. We can't match you there. He was upfront about that. He said that after the pager and the walkie-talkie attacks. Clearly, the organization was reeling then. Now they've lost a huge swathe of their top military leaders. They've also lost their ability to communicate with each other. I mean, this is an organization that will be reeling. They don't even have anybody in charge at the moment. They haven't even buried Hassan Nasrallah. So, I mean, it is an organization in flux, a very powerful organization, the biggest military and political player in this country, but reeling. They're still dangerous, though. They have people who know how to fight. They've trained. They've got a huge arsenal. Many of those weapons provided by the Iranians with guidance systems built in. And I think the real danger here for the Israelis is if it's not limited, if they stay put, if Hezbollah is able to maintain fire, if they retreat behind the Litani River, they're still able to fire on Israeli settlements in northern Israel. The Israelis can't get their citizens back in their homes. That's when it gets really dangerous for the Israelis. If they stay put, if they get comfortable, if they don't achieve their goals. That's the danger. Indeed.
Let's speak, John, about the humanitarian catastrophe as the health minister described it here. 1 million people are on the move after a week of aerial bombardment campaign by Israel. Over 1,000 people dead, and that was without the ground incursion. While they're saying it's going to be limited in scope, this could escalate into a much bigger catastrophe.
It's 1 million people. It's hard to get your head around that number.
A fifth of the country.
And that has happened in what, 8-9 days? I mean, Lebanon has a caretaker government. The government is barely functional in this country. They don't have places to put people who have been displaced, but they've been trying to put them in schools. They have no facilities, etc. I mean, we went out to the Syrian border. I think it's absolutely telling that we saw thousands and thousands of people today essentially trading one war zone for another, going to Syria. They thought they were going to be safer in Syria than they are here. People carrying extraordinary stories of villages, of homes being bombed in southern Lebanon, in Beirut, in eastern Lebanon as well. Absolutely desperate scenes. A remarkable exodus is underway. This is a country on the move in many ways. Some, more than 100,000, going to Syria. I think that tells you a little bit about just how desperate the situation is.
Extraordinary situation, and I know you were on the border today, and we are going to show our viewers that report of the desperation, people trading one conflict for another. But for now, John, thank you so much. And I'm just going to, I don't know if we can put it on our screen, but we do have a tweet from the IDF spokesperson, Daniel Hagari. You can see it there on your screen. He says, in recent recent hours, there have been many reports and rumours about IDF activity on the Lebanese border. We asked not to transmit reports about the activities of the forces due to the security of our forces. Stick to the official reports only and do not spread irresponsible rumours. So a tweet there from Daniel Hagari, the IDF spokesperson, asking people to refrain from putting out reports for the sake of the security of the forces. But what we do understand is that Israel has informed the United States that a ground incursion is imminent. And, from the images that we can see, as well as reports from the local media here, it does feel like it may have begun, but we cannot verify that independently. Let's go straight to our Ali Bunkle, who joins me live now from Jerusalem. And Ali, you and I were talking a little earlier about the fact that usually the IDF are pretty quick to come out. I mean, we saw when Hassan Nasrallah was targeted and then killed, the IDF came out at the time and said that they had launched an operation. Then they confirmed that he had been killed. At every point, they do come out. They do inform the press. It's quite interesting, isn't it, that when a sensitive military operation like this is taking place, Daniel Hagari is warning people from putting out any kind of information that may put their troops at risk at this point.
I think it's notable, and I think it's notable that there's been no official comment from the Israelis, either the Israeli military or Israeli government. I think Daniel Hagari's tweet there was mainly aimed at Israeli journalists who do operate, as other journalists do around the world, under a form of sort of censorship when there is sensitive military activity or sensitive military news. And for me, he neither confirmed nor denied what was going on there. And we are yet to have any kind of official confirmation or explanation from the Israelis as to what is going on. But it does appear through many other channels, particularly through American officials and the American media, that something is afoot. And if the ground invasion hasn't yet happened, then it is imminent. And I think that is also evident from the heavy artillery that we can see with the cameras on the border, but also there are many reports on that from social media as well. So we've been talking, haven't we, over the last couple of hours about what a difficult moment this could be, where it could lead, and the fact that you can proclaim or declare something to be limited from the outset, but things can quickly go wrong. And it is only through the Americans we're hearing this description of it being a limited operation. Hezbollah, assuming they are there and stay and fight, will probably have very different opinion and very different ambitions as to how this next phase of this war is going to play out. I suppose one tactic that the IDF could employ, at least in the early stages perhaps, is to push in, like tonight, if that's what they're doing under the cover of darkness, carry out some operations and then pull back to their side of the border and sort of operate in that way, if you like, rather than going in, taking territory, occupying territory for a certain period of time, and then hoping that they can pull back out again with their objectives achieved. But, that is just me speculating about how the IDF could go about this in a way that would not see them being necessarily dragged into a war lasting weeks, months, possibly longer than that, because let's just assume that the ground invasion has started tonight, and we've heard all this language about it being limited, and we know that the Israeli objectives are to push Hezbollah back beyond the Litani River, 10, 15 kilometers back into Lebanon. Well, let's just project forward a month from now, and during the fighting, a few hundred IDF soldiers have been killed by Hezbollah. Hezbollah are still there in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah are still firing weapons either from southern Lebanon or the Bekaa Valley into Israel. Do the Israelis withdraw then? I can't see that happening. And so this is why I think it is a very, very dangerous moment for the Israelis, for Lebanon, but for the wider Middle East, because again, when we talk about, or when others talk about it being limited, there are just so many assumptions being made that cannot be guaranteed. There is assumptions that militia in Syria, as John, Dom and I have been speaking about don't decide to get involved. There's assumptions that Iran doesn't decide to get involved, and these are just assumptions, as I say, that we cannot predict at this stage.
Predict at this point. Yeah, Ali, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there. I'm just going to take us straight to Deborah Haynes, who joins us from northern Israel. And Deborah, I understand that you can hear outgoing artillery where you are.
Yes, we've been here in northern Israel, a few miles from the border with Lebanon. And since we've been here in the last 20 minutes or so, we've heard not constant, obviously, but every now and again you hear the unmistakable sound of outgoing rounds being fired. We can't actually see what is happening, but behind me, beyond into the darkness over the hillside, that is the direction of Lebanon, and clearly there is some kind of military action happening. We can hear, it's sort of every minute or so you hear the sound of, there you go, for example, the sound of an outgoing round heading off in that direction. It is the kind of indicators that you would expect if there was going to be a push of ground troops going in by tank on foot, artillery rounds being fired maybe ahead of time, maybe as it's happening, to identify targets and enable the ground forces to push in. So it could well be that that is what we're hearing. Obviously, it is all speculation until we have official confirmation about what is going on. But clearly, with all of the reporting coming out over the last few hours about the potential of Israeli special forces already conducting operations inside Lebanon ahead of a potential wider incursion, or a limited incursion, but an incursion, then these kinds of artillery noises which we're hearing here is exactly what you'd expect. You can also hear the sound of maybe it's aircraft. I thought I heard a drone when I arrived here as well. So there clearly is military activity happening in the area. And a lot of this area in the north has been specifically cordoned off because military activity is going on.
Indeed, as you say, the area now has become a military zone, even though there hasn't been official confirmation from the Israeli side that this incursion is imminent or has begun. We're certainly hearing those reports that they have told the United States that they are going to be launching. I can still hear that behind you, the artillery fire, Deborah. I mean, obviously there is outgoing at this point and heavy artillery fire.
Yes, I mean, like you said, it's impossible to predict. I was told that before we got here, there was a very heavy barrage that happened, and then, as I was saying, since I've been here, it's every now and again you hear an outgoing round. There you go. There's another one. It seems there must be a position over in that direction. There's obviously again firing towards Lebanon. And that, some of it's quite loud, like the one you just heard then, but then you also hear sort of the sound of outgoing, but a more distant away. So it does seem it's a sort of a wide area that's clearly involved in this.
Deborah, thank you so much. And we're just looking at the latest pictures coming in from northern Israel. As you say, heavy artillery fire in those border towns, which have become a military zone now, as Israel prepares for what it says is a limited ground incursion. Although I must say the Israelis have not confirmed this. And the IDF spokesperson put out a tweet to say, please refrain from spreading any kind of information or rumors at this stage for the protection of our forces. And as our Alistair Bunkle was saying there, that is aimed mostly for Israeli journalists who are operating like the rest of us and trying to get as much information as possible. Well, let's speak now to Lebanon's Economy Minister, Amin Salam, who is here with me now. Minister, thank you so much for joining us. You and I have spoken on a number of occasions. You have warned about a potential of this taking place, the concern around the humanitarian crisis that could develop. And your country has been here before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we couldn't emphasize more the concerns we had a week ago or a month ago that we are witnessing the full execution of what we were fearing most, which is now about 1 million displaced people all over the city of Beirut, Mount Lebanon area, leaving all their countries and locations in the south and in the Bekaa. Most importantly, there's a lot of people that are on the streets. I mean, the government is doing its best to take care of the displaced people, but the amount of people that is all over the city within the time frame that they moved into the city is really, as I said today in one of the media outlets, I said it's unprecedented in the world. There has never been 1 million people that have been displaced in less than 4 or 5 days. It's a chaos, it's a disaster, it's weighing heavily on everything in Lebanon. And at the same time, we're getting news every hour. And just the past few minutes, we got news that the Israeli cabinet or the Israeli government has given full approval for escalation. And as we stand here speaking, we could hear the MK drones over our heads, taking surveillance pictures of the city, of everywhere, with official threats as well on the social media and in the news today to be bombing in the next few minutes or hours the suburbs of Beirut.
Yeah, and we saw central Beirut hit, overnight. They said that they were targeting a Palestinian militant group, but more Hezbollah targets have been hit. Civilians have died in those attacks as well. Minister, can I get some kind of confirmation from you? We are hearing reports that the Lebanese army has retreated at least 5 kilometers from their positions.
Yes, I have been following the news for the past hour. There has been there's coordination happening with the UNIFIL. The UNIFIL as well is at a very critical point, and it's difficult. The UNIFIL's role today with the Lebanese army is to avoid escalation. And as everybody knows, the Lebanese army is being very critical as to how they are maneuvering around the situation without direct contact with the Israeli army that is moving slowly into the borders. Their operations, I believe, have started.
Do you believe they are already in Israeli forces? From your information, they're already in the country?
Well, we've heard that they have been moving very rapidly. It has been visible as well to the people in the north, to the Lebanese army, to the UNIFIL, that there are massive numbers of tanks that are lined on the border now as we speak.
These reports that they're in Ramesh in southern Lebanon, can you confirm those at all?
I can't really confirm. I was doing a few phone calls before we started this interview, but I have not gotten confirmation yet that we are there or that the tanks have been close to those villages, including Ramesh. But I am certain that it's very clear that the decision has been made. They are moving. Even though the Lebanese government today, our Prime Minister was very clear in our message to do a full compliance with 1701 and to send the Lebanese army to be present with the UNIFIL in that area. The reason the government sent this message was part of our diplomatic positive reporting.
But how do you stop Hezbollah?
Escalation.
How do you stop Hezbollah from breaching that?
Well, I mean, there is a lot of work being done internally and internationally as we speak, despite the fact that we heard today from Hezbollah leader that they are still on the same position to defend and attack any Israeli invasion. However, there is really unprecedented as well diplomatic work being done around the clock, 24/7 with the United States, with France, with the European Union. A number of the Arab countries, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar, are being very involved to avoid an escalation, because once there's a ground war invasion, we are mostly fearful that there will be a clash, and that clash might lead to further escalation, further bombing. So that is where we are putting all our efforts now. However, things seem to be a little out of control on the border as far as the Israeli side, the Israeli decision to do this invasion.
And obviously, they're not going to stop their campaign here in Beirut. I just want to show you this tweet, which you were referencing a little earlier, that the IDF has put out another evacuation order for southern Beirut.
Yes,
they have asked people to evacuate these certain neighborhoods. This is very similar to what we saw following Hassan Nasrallah's death. It's a very similar that came out about midnight, and they told people, and then we saw people go running from there.
It's very similar, it's very specific, it's very precise. You can even see, the specific locations almost per building, as far as sending, announcements to evacuate. And after what we have seen, this could not be taken lightly. This should be taken seriously.
Minister, what is your government doing to rein in Hezbollah as well?
To be quite honest, I mean, we did a very urgent meeting upon the arrival of the Prime Minister from New York on Saturday night. The message was very clear. The message was, let us all work, let us all be united to avoid escalation. Let us all calm down and try to, and the message as well included members of the Hezbollah political party that are members of the cabinet. And
do you think they will listen?
We felt that there was a lot. I mean, for them at the moment, it was a time of grief, it was a time of pain. But we felt that there was a very clear understanding that the country cannot bear that escalation. The country does not want to go into this escalation. And we felt that there's very good understanding, and I wouldn't say leniency, but it was very clear that if there is a way to find a diplomatic solution, it will be taken. It will be considered very seriously.
It's whether the Israelis want to also.
Well, that's another. That's where we don't have control. That's where we don't have control.
But the Americans might. Are you disappointed in the American response in all of this?
Well, I've been in communications with many different channels, including the American side, and they have been pushing for de-escalation. They announced very clearly that an invasion of Lebanon would not be what they want, even though they stated that the Israelis have informed them, but they said very clearly that is not what they want. They would rather find a diplomatic exit out of this, because even the Americans cannot control, or they would not know where things would go. Because even if they had a certain intervention on the Israeli side, they will definitely not have an intervention on the Hezbollah side. And that is what we're trying to avoid.
Minister, really grateful that you've joined us and shared your thoughts here on the programme. Thank you very much. Well, we've got lots more coming up in the next edition of our programme, as we've been reporting the potential Israeli ground invasion. The Minister says he believes it may already have begun. We're seeing heavy artillery fire across the border. Stay with us. We've got lots more coming up in the next edition.
It's a clash between barbarism and civilization.
The failures of October the 7th are the failures of Benjamin Netanyahu.
He was in complete shock. Everything he believed about Hamas turned out to be wrong.
They are bent on Israel's destruction.
I think he's the greatest statesman we've had.
He's not a diplomat. He's a populist politician.
I'm Katie Spencer, and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. When you think of Glastonbury, it's mud you want and music. They're going to cross to us live in a minute. Okay. Thank you so much. Brad Pitt is now a prolific producer behind the scenes.
It's not a mystery to me. We always were capable of doing this.
Oh, they're wonderful children as an audience.
Who did that? Maverick here on the red carpet. I'm so excited, Tom Cruise. This is the story of the night.
It's the little independent film that could.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
Nor have I ever struck any woman in my life.
There's this illusion of power.
Are you feeling well?
I remember covering the Oscars and that now infamous moment, the Will Smith slap. Nobody could quite believe that it happened. You can tell from these crowds just how excited people are for the return of Pride.
These actors playing the lead roles were born long after the Sex Pistols broke up.
Are you pleased that you did say yes to the job?
I've never regretted it.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world. It can be incredibly surreal being swept up in their world, but we try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
Don't leave me.
Yeah, okay.
There's no easy goodies. There's no easy baddies.
I've had a great time here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello and welcome back to our ongoing coverage of the developing situation here in Lebanon, and you're watching The World. We've been covering this conflict extensively for the last week and a half, and it now appears, according to reports that are coming out, that Israel has informed the United States that a ground incursion is imminent. I just want to show you these images of the heavy artillery fire that is now taking place, captured by our cameras of artillery fire into southern Lebanon from northern Israel. Have a look. Well, you were listening there to the heavy artillery fire that is being captured by our cameras there. And Lebanese media, the local media here, are reporting that they are hearing and seeing the heavy artillery fire in those border towns. They're also reporting that they can see Israeli tanks in some of those border villages and towns, although I just spoke to the economy minister, who said he could not confirm that that had happened. Of course, it is the dead of night, and there is a lot of information that still isn't clear. But what we do know at this point is that Israel has informed the United States that they are going to conduct this ground incursion. It is something that people here have been anxiously waiting all week, especially following the killing of Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, where people were wondering where this was going to go next. Even tonight, the IDF has issued a warning to residents of southern Beirut, asking them to evacuate their homes. I just want to show you that tweet that came up of the neighborhoods in the southern area of Beirut that have been asked to evacuate their homes. For the last few days, we have seen women, children, the elderly, families leaving their homes, gathering in parks, sleeping out in the open, sleeping in town squares, uncertain about where to go, because there is now 1 million people on the move in this country, from the south, making their way up to the north, from the east in the Bekaa Valley, as well as some northern towns that have been struck by Israel's bombardment. So a lot of developments taking place there. We can see that aerial bombardment that we just showed you you from our cameras. Our teams are in northern Israel at the moment. Their cameras are stationed there. They can hear it, they can see it, and we will be bringing you their reports. You can just see these images that they captured a few moments ago. And you can really hear that heavy artillery. Our correspondent John Sparks was telling me earlier that this is really to lay the groundwork. This area in northern Israel has become a military zone now as Israeli forces, special forces, prepare the ground to enter Lebanon. The IDF have not confirmed or denied the situation. They did put out a tweet. The IDF spokesperson put out a tweet to say, asking journalists, asking people not to spread rumors, not to put out information, because they said this is about the safety of their troops as they send in special forces in what they say is a limited incursion into southern Lebanon. But of course, the United States is incredibly concerned this evening. We heard from our Dominic Waghorn, who said that the Americans have been counseling, have been telling the Israelis to ensure that this is limited. But of course, that comes with so many risks. And of course, the concern is, will this spill over regionally? Well, as we've been saying, much of Israel's focus over the past week has been, as they've said, to dismantle the so-called axis of resistance. Let's just talk you through what that is. It's an informal group of Iranian-backed militias hostile to Israel. It includes groups from Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and other regional neighbors. One blast today killed 3 members of the Popular Front, a militant group in Lebanon and Gaza. Hamas have also confirmed their leader in Lebanon, Fatah Sharif, was killed in Tyre. And though Israel has pulled back in Gaza, eliminating Hamas is one of its big aims. A strike today at a school killed 4 people. Israel claimed it was being used by Hamas as a command center. But the main focus recently has been to target the top branches of Hezbollah's leadership structure. The longtime leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed on Sunday, and the majority of his top commanders have also been killed in a number of different strikes in Lebanon. Israel has since widened the scope of the conflict, targeting the Houthis in Yemen with strikes on ports, power plant and other infrastructure. There have also been local reports of strikes in Syria along its border with Lebanon. This afternoon, Israel's Prime Minister released this message to the Iranian people. Just have a listen to this.
Every day, that regime plunges our region deeper into darkness and deeper into war. Every day, their puppets are eliminated. Ask Muhammad Def. Ask Nasrallah. There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There is nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country.
Benjamin Netanyahu, and that's really the language we've been hearing on the Israeli side for the last week, that everyone everywhere is potentially a target if they are a threat to Israel. Let's bring in Nadav Eyal, security correspondent for Israel's Yediot newspaper. Thank you so much, Nadav, for joining us here on the program. It is an incredibly tense time here in Lebanon, but just tell me what you're hearing in Israel about the developments that are taking place here at the moment.
Well, first of all, there is a media blackout as far as politicians are concerned. The spokesperson of the Prime Minister basically told the cabinet ministers and members of the coalition not to say a word to anyone or no off the record as to what's happening in Lebanon and to the possibility of a ground incursion. But if the Americans are saying that Israel is in the process of ground operations, we can safely assume that this is the case. And indeed, in Israel, they were saying again and again in recent days, security sources, IDF sources, that in order to finalize their mission and return the dozens of thousands of Israelis that have been displaced for a year now, they need to have some sort of a ground operation in southern Lebanon. They said it's going to be limited. This is not going to be a full-fledged invasion of Lebanon. It's going to be a very targeted operations that their aim is to put those areas that have been attacked repeatedly by Hezbollah out of his aims and out of the distance that they can shoot at, and take care of infrastructures in these areas so those citizens of Israel can return to their houses.
Yeah. to return to their homes. And the Israelis have made it very clear, Nadav, that the aim of this is to have those residents of the northern part of Israel return back to their homes. But are people concerned tonight that this could drag Israel into what might not be a limited incursion? I mean, Israel has been here before.
Absolutely, and this is a fair point to make. Israel operated in Lebanon before, both in the 1970s, the 1982 war. In 2006, Hezbollah, led by Nasrallah, attacked Israel. Then Israel entered Lebanon, and its forces got till the Litani River. So, yeah, of course, there's always the possibility of any operation in Lebanon being complex and not being within the aims of this war as it complicates. And there's the option of Iran responding to what happened in Beirut and the killing of Hassan Nasrallah and the entire Central Command of Hezbollah. And Iran wants also to somehow revenge the death of Ismail Haniyeh, something we almost don't mention anymore. So there's this possibility. But look,
Nadav, is there fear, though, that it might not just be the battle-hardened fighters of Hezbollah that Israeli forces are taking on? We are hearing, even the supreme leader in Iran, we heard the Deputy Secretary General of Hezbollah this afternoon call on other fighters from Syria, from Iraq, from Yemen to come here and fight Israeli forces.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a possibility. And these fears definitely exist. And I'm not going to underestimate them. But let me tell you what the consensus in Israelis leadership and also military leadership is. That this time it cannot end with a bluff. That the idea that Hezbollah and the entire axis, so-called axis of resistance, what Israel will label the axis of terror, can continue and attack Israel for a year without Israel crippling the abilities of Hezbollah. That's an impossible situation. And those citizens cannot sit and wait for another October 7 on the northern border of Israel. And this is why this time it needs to be tackled. And one of the points that were made in the show, and I'm hearing the show, is how Israel has been escalating its responses. And absolutely this is the case. It's been escalating its responses until Hezbollah announces basically that it stops firing and it decides to do a U-turn on its decision from October 8 to join Hamas on the southern front. So this is the aim of Israel in this war, and this time they're going to follow through.
Well, we're grateful that you've joined us, Nadav, and shared your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, a lot of concern here in Lebanon about what may potentially happen next. I can just hear a blast taking place behind me. The IDF have warned Lebanese citizens. They've issued a tweet, a statement, asking people to leave southern Beirut. This is something that we have seen for the past few days, and we have seen people take that warning very seriously. But we continue to hear the sound of blasts, which could be a sonic boom. We're also hearing a lot of drones throughout the night, last night and throughout the day. The drones have been flying overhead and the ongoing sound of bombardment. Let's just show you these images that are coming in from northern Israel, the artillery fire that has taken place, caught by our camera. Let's just have a listen. The sound of heavy artillery fire in the border towns captured by our camera crew. Our team is in northern Israel, and the sound you're hearing is outgoing towards southern Lebanon. And Lebanese media have confirmed that they have heard this heavy artillery fire in the border towns. So things are and have continued to escalate, and there are a lot of people here very concerned about what all this means. Joining me now is Faraz Maqsad, Senior Fellow at Middle East Institute. Faraz, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. We have seen over the course of the last 10 days or so the situation escalate quite dramatically. I just want to get your assessment on what we're hearing tonight about a ground incursion now.
Yalda, yes, it seems that the Israeli Security Cabinet has very much greenlit that operation. And so whether it's commenced or about to commence, I think we're looking at an operation in Southern Lebanon. The question then becomes whether this will in fact be limited or whether this is something much broader than that. The Israeli position has been dynamic, to say the least. It has changed. The stated objective of this campaign at first was the return of some 60,000 Israelis who've been displaced from their homes as a result of Hezbollah's rocket fire. But increasingly, we're hearing that this is an ambitious operation to readdress the balance of power, not only in Lebanon, but in the Levant, in Israel's favor as this showdown against Iranian forces in the region, that Iranian ring of fire around Israel, as that showdown continues.
Yeah, I mean, for us, what's been, I think, quite extraordinary, and I've been speaking to a lot of people in Lebanon over the course of the last few days, certainly after the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, is the surprise at Iran's inaction so far. They've heard words, but they feel, in many ways, whether they're supporters of Hassan Nasrallah or Hezbollah or not, that Iran has stepped back and continues to say, well, Hezbollah will continue this fight, so will the rest of our proxies.
That's a great point. Not only are the majority of Lebanese surprised, bewildered at the fact that Iran has not, in fact, stepped up, not only just to the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, perhaps the most important personality in that Iranian axis around the region, but also Ismail Haniyeh, in the heart of Tehran under their own protection. And so, yeah, even Hezbollah's own supporters, their own support base, feel let down by Iran at this point. And I think that that fissure is interesting and would be, there's an opportunity there for the U.S. and others to exploit. But that said, that shouldn't at all be surprising. We all know that Iran plays the long game and has a preference for asymmetric warfare and indirect warfare rather than direct warfare.
And I guess for us, what is clear and has always been clear, but I guess more so to Hezbollah and their supporters at this juncture and this point, is at the end of the day for Iran, and I can hear very loud blasts just behind me, at this very moment and this point, for Iran, it is all about preservation of the regime. And therefore, if, people like Hassan Nasrallah, who often described as being the second most revered after the Ayatollah, well, if he's sacrificed at the end of the day, it's the regime that needs to be protected.
That's absolutely true. But there's also an inherent risk in all this, which is that if you don't escalate to reestablish deterrence, Iran has been hemorrhaging deterrence for the past year since this war started with October 7th. It's been struck directly and indirectly. Its proxies, Nasrallah, Hamas, Al-Daif, and so on and so forth. And the response, even on April 13th, when Iran launched that unprecedented direct response at Israel, it was very calibrated. It was messaged well in advance, and it didn't restore that sense of deterrence. So the risk here is that if Iran does nothing or does very little, that it in fact encourages Netanyahu to do more against it and to take advantage of that weakness.
For us, I'm really grateful that you've joined us here on the program and your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
I'm just going to take you back now to northern Israel, where our camera is capturing the heavy artillery that is currently taking place. Now, Israel, as I've said, have not confirmed the developing situation, although there are reports that they have told the United States that they will launch a ground incursion. But let me just show you these images that we've captured from northern Israel. the sound of heavy artillery there, and both the Lebanese media say that they can hear it coming in, and our teams who are there on the ground, Deborah Haynes was telling us a little earlier, and we could see the artillery going out just behind her, the sound of it. So things dramatically escalating, although Israel hasn't confirmed that that ground offensive has begun, but they have, according to our sources and contacts and colleagues at NBC, they've said that US officials have been informed of this. Let's get the very latest from my colleague Alex Crawford.
The Israeli forces have been massing on Lebanon's southern border for days, pointing to an ever closer ground incursion. And the defense minister gave one of the clearest hints yet when he visited his troops hours before.
This is your mission. We will employ all that is needed. Your forces, other forces, from the air, from the sea, and also from the land.
Israeli artillery is shelling targets so intensely along the border that UN peacekeepers who we travelled with just a few weeks ago told us they're unable to patrol because of the security situation, although they remain in position. According to US media, Israeli special forces are already inside Lebanon, carrying out reconnaissance raids. And Sky News understands Lebanese army troops are repositioning along the border. That's being read by many that an incursion is pretty much underway. Explosions have been seen in southern Lebanon. And as more Israeli troops were spotted gathering on the border, the IDF declared 3 villages a military zone, another indication troops may be on the move or about to be. In the first Hezbollah speech since the killing of their leader, the militant group signaled they're ready for any ground battle.
We're prepared if the Israelis decide to enter by land. The resistance forces are ready for a ground engagement.
The lead up to this point has been bloody and violent. We watched rescue workers searching for survivors hours earlier at a site where it's hard to believe there once stood 2 multi-story residential blocks, packed full of families, many of them displaced. There've been some remarkable tales of survival. The rescuers took a long and painstaking 4 hours to bring out this man. They've located many of those trapped by their shouts for help despite being buried. This young man, his face bloodied, live streamed his cries for help. My brother and I are trapped, he's saying. Please help. I don't know where my mother and father are. He gave an exact location. He and his brother somehow survived. His parents didn't, along with more than 40 others, in the single most deadly Israeli attack so far. That sound is the first apartment block coming down after residents say they heard 3 Israeli airstrikes. You're about to see the adjacent second block collapse. Both were filled with families who'd already fled the bombings further south. The Israeli forces say their attacks are aimed at dismantling Hezbollah's military infrastructure, weaponry and strike capabilities. It's viewed very differently by Lebanese people on the ground. This is a literal massacre, this civil defense rescuer tells us. He spent all night pulling people out, including the young man in the video. I've never seen anything like it, he goes on. This is a war crime. For the first time this year, the Israeli forces hit central Beirut rather than its southern suburbs. This is a busy residential and transport intersection. The target, 3 leaders of a Palestinian faction based in Lebanon. The Israeli attacks appear to be widening in scope. The strike in the center of the capital is on top of multiple strikes down south as well as in the east of the country. Among those killed, the IDF said, was Lebanon's Hamas leader, also an employee of the UN refugee agency UNRWA. The number of dead from Israeli attacks in less than a fortnight now looks set to eclipse 34 days of war in 2006.
Whatever the intended targets of these airstrikes, they are coming at enormous human cost. And to the Lebanese people across the country, the Israeli tactics and their consequences are making them feel this is rapidly turning into another Gaza.
Those pulled out of the collapsed buildings are rare. 19-year-old Zainab somehow survived, but has a broken leg, broken hip and 2 fractures in her shoulders. She doesn't know yet that her father, brother and sister all died.
فاستهدافها لهيك بناية The Israelis targeting that building only means they want to scare us. They target civilians. But you should know we're not afraid. They can't scare us. And even if they try to kill us and maim us, we'll keep fighting.
The medical staff are frightened too, most afraid to be identified.
We've seen what the Israelis do in Gaza, and now it's our turn. They're not seeing any difference between civilians, medics, or fighters. They're criminals.
Hezbollah said it's responding to these strikes with what it called minimum effort, and it's ready for a long battle, whilst Western countries who are unable to broker an end to this are drawing mounting criticism.
We don't want anyone to get in our war, but all what we want is to stop supplying Israeli arms and Israeli defense forces, and as you see, this is the result. This is the result of the supplies.
Multiple entire families are being killed, 7 members in this one family alone. There's an overwhelming grief in Lebanon right now, as well as a growing humanitarian crisis, and the fear that this is going to get even worse. Alex Crawford, Sky News, in Sidon, in southern Lebanon.
Let's go straight to our Deborah Haynes, who joins me from northern Israel. And earlier, Deborah, we could see the artillery fire. We could hear it just behind you. Just tell us what's happening there now.
There's been a steady beat of artillery fire since we've been here in the last hour, and sometimes you can see orange flashes in the distance. Lebanon is about 5 miles or so over in that direction, and the artillery fire is clearly heading over there. We can also hear drones overhead. These are all the indicators that Israel is preparing for some kind of ground incursion if it hasn't already started.
Deborah, thank you so much. Well, as we've been reporting, Israel is believed to have told the United States that a ground incursion is imminent. We'll leave you tonight, and we'll be back with all the latest. Goodbye for now.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid. And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle. Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you
to be honest with people. That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.